When we are working with Power Automate variables inside Flow, before we use any variable, we have to initialize it. So basically, we have to define a storage in memory and tell Power Automate, this is the place that I want to put my content in it. This is where I want to store the age. This is where I want to store the product expiry date. This is the storage that I want to put the email template inside it. So with all that said, initialize variable becomes the key action to work with variable. So every variable starts with initialize variable. For this action to run, we need to provide a name for the variable. And this name better be something meaningful so that we can trace it, so that we can understand what it does. I also need to mention that pick the proper name for the action that creates the variable. In the future, if you decide to integrate this Power Automate flow with Power Apps, the name that you pick for this initialize variable is going to give you lots of clarity in the work that you perform. Let's put that aside and come back with initialize variable and see how it works. When you create a variable, you give it a name, and then you need to pick up the type for it. The types that are available in Power Automate are Boolean, integer, float, string, object, and array. Many of them are very self-explanatory. Boolean can be true or false, integer, a whole number, float is a number that can have decimal points, string is a string, there is nothing to explain. There are two a little bit more complex data types that are object and array. Object, I will give you a brief description about it and a small example, but really digging into it is beyond the scope of this course. Instead, I will tell you where to go to get all the information that you want about the object data type. Now, let's start by going to Power Automate and creating our first variable. I guess I don't need to tell you. We go to flow.microsoft.com again, and I click on Create. So we want to create a new flow. This time it's going to be, again, the instant flow, simply because we don't need to go somewhere outside Flow to run something and test it. This is very easy to work with and run our tests. So I pick up a name for it. I would say first variable demo. And I pick manually trigger a flow and I click on create. And the flow is created. Now I can add a new step and let's create variables. So if I click on variable group, you will see there are good number of controls that they work with variables. We start with initialize variable. That's always the first thing that you use. Before you initialize a variable, you cannot actually use any other action because they all work on a variable that already exists. So let's start by initialize variable, and I want to give it a name. This variable, for example, is my age. The type, you guessed it, the age is integer, and the value that I want to put, it's going to be 47. So it is as simple as that. Now, if you want to work with this number, I can go ahead and try it. For example, let me create a compose, my magical action, and I can put this variable inside compose. But before I really utilize it, I click on this and I rename it and I call it initialize my age. And then inside this compose, I want to go under variables and I pick my age. And using compose, we can actually trace it when we run the flow, or we can put it, for example, in an email or send it wherever we want. Not important. So let me just test it and make sure it works. And then we take it from there. Done. And here is the variable that I have, which is 47 for the value of the age. So obviously, I can add another variable here. let me initialize another variable. Okay. And this time I want to initialize another variable called client name. Type, you guessed it again, it's going to be string. After selecting the data type, I want to put a value inside it. So to put the value here, I can simply write the text that I want to display here, like Ali Reza. And just go to compose. I get rid of the age that I had here, and I add the client name here, save, and let me click on test, run flow, and let's verify that actually I have this content here. Great. So far, so good. I could create two variables. One of them is initialize my age. The other one is initialize variable, but I need to rename it also. And I call the action initialize client name. So far, we learned there are different types of variables. We learned that we can initialize variables. We learned about two different variable types, integer and string, and we created an example of each one of them. In the next lecture, I want to show you how you can actually use these variables.